on the all-day market action on opening and closing bells weekdays 9 to 11 a.m. and 2 to 5 p.m.
Here to discuss this is Harry Abrahamson, financial advisor and CEO of Abrahamson Financial Group. Thank you so much for joining us. So can we start off by you giving us some overview of how this buy now, pay later model works, and what are the pros and cons for those consumers getting into it?
Well, you have to be careful with the buy now, pay later because, are you able to afford what you're paying for right now, right? If you can get, credit that's relatively cheap, but you have to be careful in the long term, make sure that you can afford what you're actually buying and don't necessarily go into to debt for luxury items or anything that's, something that's way above what you can afford to pay for.
But you say you have to make sure you can afford it. Well, that's the reason people are using it, because they can't afford it. So they're like, I'm just going to pay a little bit now, a little bit later, and they try to spread it out. So for consumers, they're thinking, this is a good thing. I'm spreading it out, being responsible, not trying to put it all on one credit card right now.
Yeah, I mean, they can do that, but they can also maybe free up some cash flow in different areas too, not just looking at the debt, but maybe adjusting their 401k contributions short term, right, to make sure that you can bring in some additional cash flow. Maybe adjust your W-4 exemptions, which can also free up monthly cash flow. So you want to look at different areas outside of just looking at the debt or going into debt to pay for things short term.
Okay, so can you break down maybe how the regulation of this industry differs from the traditional credit card usage?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you want to, credit cards are one thing. And if you're using any kind of capital, whether it's borrowing money from a 401k where you're borrowing money out of there, or maybe you're accessing capital from an insurance policy, which probably would be the best thing in today's day and age, believe it or not. You want to be able to look at different areas of where you're accessing cash or cash flow to help supplement whatever's going on financially.
And some of these cards, some of these programs or models that actually have cards too. I know some of the big buy now, pay later players include Zip, Affirm, Klarna. So have each of these released their physical cards that link to one's bank account, all with the option to pay the interest-free installments over time, because that makes a big difference if it's interest-free. And what are some of the potential risks for the consumers? Yeah,
well, you have to be careful to make sure primarily that what you're dealing with is an institution that's backed by the FDIC. You also want to then weigh up if you're getting any kind of points or benefits from these cards. You just want to make sure that you're also protecting, your money, your assets, and where they are. So these cards that offer different benefits, you also want to make sure they're also backed up, or that you have enough money, saved up in case something does happen with one of these institutions.
Well, it looks like a big institution is trying to get into the game. Apple is now offering a buy now, pay later service called Apple Pay Later. Now, this is the concern that Apple's devices, or I should say, do you have concern that Apple devices, the dominance that they have now, coupled with the payment model, could worsen matters for some people? Or does this price point for Apple's products protect them from mass defaults, if you will?
Well, I think what you all have to really understand with like Apple or these institutions that are out there, they're obviously looking at their bottom line, right? So if they're offering something to a consumer, you have to really take a step back and ask yourself the question, is this really in the best interest of yourself, or is it in the best interest of the institution, right? And you have to properly analyze what you are doing to make sure it's going to benefit you, not the institution. Sometimes a short-term fix is easy. You do it, you think it's the right thing long term, but you do have to take a step back and say, hey, is this really what's good for me in terms of the benefits I'm receiving, or is it really going to be benefiting maybe Apple or a company that's a large institution that's out there? So it's important to really decipher what's going on from the message that they're sending out there and the consumers in terms of what they're doing with their personal finances. It's critical.
Right, and it's almost like that rent-to-own option that a lot of people started getting into, that advisors said maybe not do that, especially because it could, in the end, cost a lot more. So help us out here. What are some ways that people can better manage their debt and take advantage of the buy now, pay later model at the same time?
Well, so what you want to really do with this situation is you want to manage your liquidity and your debt. Super important day to day. When you're out there and you have debt and you're trying to manage that debt, you want to make sure that all of your cash flow isn't going just towards that debt, because there may be an emergency. Something might come up. So you want to make sure that you have liquidity that's there too. Just because you have debt doesn't mean that you don't need to put money away and have some liquidity or money in the bank account. I think the hardest part for most people that's out there right now is that they put money away into a savings account and they feel, I'm not getting a rate of return. Why am I doing this? But the truth of the matter is that you need to have proper liquidity built up, even if you have debt. So you want to manage your debt. You also want to make sure that you do have proper liquidity, and you don't want to be putting money all into maybe a 401k where you can't touch it if an emergency pops up.
Yeah,
so you want to be able to have it.
say,
You want to strike a balance.
Yeah, always, 3 to 6 months of liquidity just in case. So before we go, real quick, we got to ask you, where do you see the buy now, pay later industry maybe in 2 years?
Good question. Well, I think with interest rates increasing and rising right now, I think in the next 2 years, it's going to really play out in terms of what people are doing today. I think it's going to amplify what we are doing today. I think people need to be really cautious of what's happening right now, because I think with rising interest rates in the near future, which is happening right now, and 2 years from today, if you take this buy now and pay later approach, it really might come back and be something that's going to be detrimental to your overall financial picture.
Very good point. So be careful out there, everybody. All right, Harry Abrahamson, financial advisor and CEO of Abrahamson Financial Group. Thank you so much for joining us.